Okay, back for part two of my personal UK hip hop timeline of how I became a fan of UK hip hop. Part one started with the early 80s and took us up to 85. Picking up now for part two. Oh yeah, this is honor of the Peace Unkept record with myself and DJ Awkward, and Awkward from the UK. And so 87, a breakthrough record. And don't quote me 1,000,000% on this next thing. I have to go back and read my notes and do a little more research. I'm still trying to figure out more details, but it does seem that this record that I'm about to talk about is, how do I phrase this? One of the first records not made in New York that got support in New York. Like that got a decent amount of support in New York. It was kind of like a underground hit kind of in New York, is my understanding. Ragamuffin Hip Hop, Asher D and Daddy Freddy. Yeah, what you know about that? That record was, like I said, it was big for me. Where I used to hear on WNUR in '87, and that was like the only way I knew how to hear it. And that was an amazing record. The beat, ragamuffin style hip hop. It was just like a breakthrough record. Like people talk about Shinehead and Just Ice and BDP and UTFO, who gets overlooked, are all important in bringing reggae into hip hop. Now they weren't the first, but they kind of really helped popularize it. But this record is a key one that you cannot leave out of that discussion. Simon Harris production, and this time, like they did a few 12 inches. Ragamuffin Hip Hop, Brutality. They had a B-side that was dope. Asher D solo cut, and then actually I just recently got the album on CD because I love this album so much. I just got this like last month. Yeah, it's like 10 tracks, and it's like these beats, man. Simon Harris was on fire with these beats and the rhyming or the chanting. Yeah, everything about this record is pretty dope. And so that was sort of a breakthrough record of like, but again, I don't think I knew that was a UK thing quite yet. It didn't really register that. They might even mention the lyrics, I can't remember, but it didn't really stand out. I thought of more of a Jamaican thing because of the ragamuffin style. But that Profile Records connection will continue later on in 87, I believe later on. I think this might have been towards the end of 87. Profile and Music of Life did another collaboration, a Hard as Hell compilation. And again, when I bought this record, I mentioned this before, I didn't even know that these were UK MCs. I would just always buy every rap tape that I could, or rap vinyl or tape. I was buying both at the time, whatever I could find. And compilations were a good way to just learn about new artists. I always wanted to hear new artists. Like I was an MC, like a battle MC. Who's the competition? What am I competing with? Who's new around from different places? So I would always, if I saw a compilation, I didn't recognize anyone's name, and the titles, these sound like they could be interesting, I would definitely cop it if I could. And so that Hard as Hell #1, it had the Asher D and Daddy Freddy Ragamuffin Hip Hop on there. I learned about MC Duke, Overlord X, Derek B had Get Down on there, the Demon Boys, CJ McIntosh and Einstein. I pretty much learned about all that, or most of those, from this compilation. And I don't think anywhere on there it says it's a UK compilation, which I assume was intentional because they didn't want people to automatically block it out. They wanted to, because like back then, especially, it was like, if you weren't from New York, you weren't getting any support in New York. It was rare. I've heard stories about Ragamuffin Hip Hop and King T's Payback, both in 87, being the kind of early records to get love in New York that were non-New York records. So that's kind of a breakthrough. 88, they dropped Volume 2 to the Hard as Hell, and that was something else. You got MC Duke really got two cuts on that one. I really became an MC Duke fan on that one, and She Rockers were dope on there, but Hijack style. I distinctly remember I had got the vinyl of this one. I remember I had the vinyl one in a corner, like next to my head of my bed. And I put it on. I walked around. I go to the other side of my room, and I'm listening to it. I don't remember where this song was on a compilation. But when that song came on, like literally, I was getting ready to do something. And that scratch, how they break down that little wobble scratch of the Slick Rick. And I was just like, looked over like the turntable, like it was going to tell me what was going on. Like I need answers. What's happening? The beat was dope, the cuts. Then Comanche Slide came in. I literally just had to go right back to turntable, grab the record, and try to, who is this? And that's how I became a Hijack fan instantly. That song was just incredible to me. The scratching, the beat, the rhyme, and everything about it. They became an instant favorite of mine. And that was my favorite on the compilation and one of my favorite artists at the time. And they just continued, like I talked about Hijack a lot. from the next single, Bad Man is Robbing, and Doomsday of Rap, and Hold No Hostage, to Style Warriors Revenge, and all these things, just like nonstop. And to this day, Hijack is still one of my all-time favorite hip-hop groups, just innovative in every possible way. And so that was a big deal. And that's, you know, over the next few years, from that compilation 88 to the album I got later on in the early 90s. And I was always following Hijack. Then the next breakthrough thing I remember, Derek B. Now, like I said, Derek B was on those Hard as Hell compilations on both. And I remember hearing a story. I believe this is, I assume it's true. I can't remember where I read the story, but I heard the story that for the very first Hard as Hell, Derek B was working with Simon Harris at Music of Life, and they were finishing the first compilation, and they only had 9 songs, and they wanted 10. And so Derek B he just made that song to have a 10th song. The Get Down song, I believe that was. So that was sort of how he became, well, I'm skipping ahead, but keep that in mind. So when I got the album, though, Bullet from a Gun, that was a big deal for me. Back in the summer of 88, with my Sharp GFI 75, which you can see a little piece of it back there, still with me since 81. But I would walk around with that, and one of the main tapes I had was Derek B's Bullet from a Gun. My homeboy, shout out Darrell Robinson, he'd always be like, yo, play Bullet from a Gun, the title track. We love the title track, but also Power Moves, Human Time Bomb, Bad Young Brother. And then I was a fan of, those are my favorite songs on the album. And then, like, I don't know, months later, I had it on vinyl. I saw the cassette had 2 bonus songs. The UK version, I think, had these already, and it's also UK version sequenced differently, I believe. I think their sequence is better than ours, in the US version, the sequencing is. But it had Deaf Beat Boy and All Right Now. 2 of the best songs from him from that era weren't on the original vinyl. So that was the era of finding the bonus cuts on tape or CD or whatever, and you might get something, the best song on the album on the bonus cut, or one of the best songs. So I was a huge fan of the Bullet from a Gun record. I mean, the beats, the cuts were dope. It's one, I gotta go back and look at this too, but it's one of the earlier records where DJ doing like a scratch sentence. He would pair phrases together and scratch them and make little sentences and little phrases and stuff. Something that I kind of do with my collages and stuff now. And this is one of the ways, and one of the people that really inspired me. Like, oh, I love how he does that, piecing together these different scratch pieces. So there's a lot of reasons why I love this record. And one thing that was bugged out is that the MC is Easy Q. And I don't know, I don't think it was maybe like 7-8 years later, spoiler alert, if you didn't know, that Easy Q actually is just Derek B. He basically raps the whole album as Easy Q, rapping about himself as Derek B, being an ill DJ. So I don't know why he chose to do that, but that was like kind of a unique concept. Like it's just, when you go back and listen to it with that kind of thinking, it's kind of interesting how he approached it. So this record was a breakthrough record for me. So shout out Derek B. And then, you know, from there, you know, the compilation, I knew those names, I would look for those artists. So I actually couldn't find a lot of these records in stores out where I was, unless they were through Profile. But I got lucky somewhere. I found the MC Duke album, Organized Rhyme, MC Duke and Leader One. I found the Organized Rhyme record when that came out in like 1990 or 89, whatever that was. And I'm Riffin' was my joint on there. I'm Riffin's an ill cut, but it had some more cuts too. And then I was already a fan of Simon Harris from his production, I talked about. But a key thing about Simon Harris is that he had those beats, breaks, and scratches records. And those records were essential for what I was doing as a producer. I didn't have a lot of, you know, stuff available. I hadn't got my dad's record collection yet. So I didn't have a lot of like the breaks and stuff that I got later from him. So I would use those Simon Harris records pretty much religiously. So that was another reason why the UK was big for me, just from Simon Harris stuff and the beats to the breakbeat records. And so then 89 came along, and Cookie Crew, Born This Way, Rhymes and Careers, phenomenal song, and more cuts on that record, and dope production from Sexasonic and Davey DMX and others. There was Hijack and this group Gate Crash. I want to know more about Gate Crash. They had a project called Brother, was about apartheid in South Africa. It was sort of like their, you know, we're all in the same gang, self-destruction type song. All these, like a lot of these names I mentioned, and some other ones I got introduced to, like MC Mello and others, were on this Brother Beyond the 16th Parallel record. Monie Love around the same time. Heard her doing, you know, Chorus Ladies first with Latifah, and then she was doing stuff with De La and Native Tongues. And then when she dropped Detrimentally Stable, that is the highest level of rapping and flow to me. Like, just like her flow, timing, the content with the style. Detrimentally Stable is a work of art. So I was a big fan of Monie Love. And so that pretty much is getting us into the 90s, where G Street started doing stuff like, you know, well, kind of like 80s. Richie Rich in 88, doing some DJ stuff. Then the Stereo MCs in 1990, the Supernatural record. I found that somewhere in the store. I think someone gave me that from a record pool. My friend K-Body was in a record pool. He would give me records sometimes. He gave me the Stereo MCs. And so that's how I heard that record. And so I was just doing all like that. And it all comes to a close around 1990, before we go to the next part in the 90s. But in the 90s, one day my DJ partner and my DJ from Wild Style, my production partner in Rage Productions, came home with 3 records. Radio Babylon 12-inch, God O.D. 12-inch, and the Dog Star Man EP. If you know, or if you don't know, I should say, Meat Beat Manifesto is all 3 of those, and all 3 of those records blew my mind. I know that goes beyond just hip hop, and that's the thing, because like back then I was just out on my own. I'd only been out on my own for a couple of years. You know, I was buying equipment, I was trying to buy tapes and all this. I didn't have a lot of disposable income. And when I heard Meat Beat Manifesto, they blew my mind. But I was like, there's no way I can go find it. I was like, what is this genre? What is this called? But I was scared to look it up, because I was like, I can't afford it. So I was like, I had a mental note. I should have a physical note, I think, somewhere, like somewhere in the future, explore Meat Beat Manifesto and everything like it. And so that's something I've done in more recent years, but that sort of like opened another door to like UK production styles. So that sort of gets us into the 90s. We're going from there in the next one. Yeah.